Now welcome back. Now make we see wetin be JavaScript events. JavaScript events na just way we say if something happen for the browser, JavaScript go know. If something happen for HTML file for the browser or something for the web page or web app, JavaScript go know. So if person press button, we go make our JavaScript do something. If JavaScript detect say something don't happen, for example, if the browser don't load finish, JavaScript will detect and then JavaScript go act or it go react to wetin don happen, and then you go maybe put code or remove code or check if the user don log in or if the user na valid user or things like that. Now wetin we dey do with JavaScript events. So make we see some examples. If you look inside my VS Code for here on the left, you go see say I don create this event.html and I don create this main.js. So make we just see wetin I do. I just create this HTML file and then I just add the script tag. This is not the only thing I add to make sure say this whole thing go work. So for inside the body, make we create a button for now. So I'll just create a button. Maybe we add text. So I'll say click me. And this click me now, inside down, I'll give this button an attribute on click. And you see say once I press on, you see say we get different events for all sorts of things wey fit happen for inside the browser for here on the right. So if I say on click, you go see say now when I add an on click, I go need to add as the value for this attribute, I go need to add the events wey go happen. So I go say, okay, wetin I want make it happen now, make we call the alert method. So I go say alert, this alert function, I go like say make it just alert, I go say hello. And if I press save, you go see say we get this button here. This button for here, now click me. So once I click am, it's supposed to give me that pop-up box for here. So if I click am, you see say we get this pop-up box where they tell us hello. Make it do another thing, like say, make I create another button. And let's say I want to make it react to double clicks or yes, double click. So I go say, okay, on DBL, that's double click. Now if I do on DBL click, then I double click, you go see say I go fit still get another kind of event. So I go say, make I just write a string and say world db click or double click, right? If I click on once, you go see say we get hello. And if I click this one once, it not they work. Why not they work? Because we make them double click. So which means the browser is even detect whenever I double click. So if I double click 1, 2, you go see say it don't they work world for there. So always know how you go to use your events, how you go to use your events. They make your JavaScript day more interactive. But sometimes you're going to see people, they write JavaScript code like this. They put their events for inside the element itself. But sometimes or most times, you're going to see them, they add them for inside our external JavaScript. So we could try and write this same code, but we're going to use our event, we're going to use our external JavaScript to do them. So if I go back inside here into my main JS file for here, I'll come say, I want to do document dot get element by ID, and I go like get this element. Which element I want get? Well, I go like get the buttons element. So button 1 and button 2. So make we just, for the sake of being simple, make we just add an ID here. And then we could just say this ID now btn2, button 2. And then we'll create another ID for here and say this one now just btn1. So I'll go say ID and I will set them to btn1. So I will come out this on click event. So we'll go clean up. All right. Now, if we go back inside our JavaScript code, and we say we want get element by ID, and we want get btn1. As we don't define that btn1 now like that, make we say we want add an event listener to them. So this event listener, where we want add for inside our external style sheet, they say now not in the work again. Our JavaScript, they show us that pop-up box again. Now make we start to add the event listener for here. So I could just say, make we actually define this as a variable. Maybe we assign a variable to this btn1. So I could just assign const btn1 and assign them to document.get element by ID, and then inside here where we come pass the btn1. In fact, make I even rename the variable here. So I'll say button1. Now this button1, it not to matter, but now what thing I do is say we fit read the values from button 1. Whenever button 1, which go be this one, if they clicked. For example, if I say whenever this day clicked, I want console log something. You're going to see this pattern a lot. So I could say I want create an event listener, and this event listener, when this event they look for click events, And whenever I get click event, make it console log something to me. So I go say button one dot add event listener. And this event listener method, what we define for this method now, the event for the first parameter, we go say we define the event. Which event we define? We define the click event. And then with the second parameter, now the function where we want make it happen. So the function what we want now function, and then this function, make this function they give us. So we'll say console log clicked me, right? Something like that. So if we save them, now anytime when we click this button, we're going to get that console log message. So as I click up, you see we get 1, 2, 3, 4 here. You see the button it grow, it grow, it grow. That's because we click on. And likewise, if you also do the same for button 2, so if we duplicate this code and just call out button 2 and change this one to 2, and then make we say we want to do the same but for button 2, which go be double click. So we go say button 2. And then the event we've defined now dbl click. So once we get that dbl click, we will say db clicked, yeah, double click. So if I double click, you just say it will work just like the other one they work. The idea be say whenever we get issue for inside our code, we dey now know where we go look for the issue. So if to say we dey do all those one events for here now, we forget problem. But because we dey do them as external, whenever we want change our code, we could just go where we want change our code. And likewise, if you even use fact arrow functions for here, so don't forget to do our fact arrow function. So if you just say as an anonymous function, and that one will still work the same way. So if I double click, you can see they work the double click for us for there. And also if you want to give them a named function, also if you still give them a named function. So if I say make I come out this function for here, make we just cut them and just call it my func or my function, and then make we define my function for here. So if you just say function, and I could just say my func, and this my func, make we clean there, and that's my func, my function. And if I click on, it will tell us say db clicked my function. So if I click on once, it no go work. If I double click on, the db clicked my function. So make we know how we do them. If you add your own function inside here as an anonymous function into your event listener, or if you just call them as a function we get as a name function inside your event listener where they here. And also you get more events. I go leave link for now, make una learn more about the events where we get for JavaScript. So, but for now, that's all we need to learn. I will see you now for the next video. Thank you.